Hey, what's up, guys? Combat Critic here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the records of these two guys, starting with Brendan Allen. So, Allen has 27 fights in total and he has won 22 of his 27 fights, lost just 5. If we talk about his 22 wins, he has 5 wins via knockout, 13 wins via submission. So, he is a submission expert. More than half of his wins have been via submission and just 4 wins via decision. Now let's talk about his 5 losses. He has been knocked out twice and he has lost via submission once and also via decision twice. Now let's take a look at Craig's record. So Paul Craig has 24 fights in total. He has won 17 of his 24 fights, lost 6. If we talk about his 17 wins, he has 4 wins via knockout, 13 wins via submission. So this man is also a submission expert. No wins via decision. And if you talk about his 6 losses, he has 4 of them via knockout. So his chin is a bit suspect. He has 1 loss via submission and also 1 via decision. And he also has a draw on his record. Both these guys have very similar records. They are submission experts and they don't really have a lot of knockout power. Now let's talk about the physical and career statistics of both these guys. Starting with the height. Height is 6'2" for Brendan Allen and it is 6'3" for Paul Craig. So Craig will have a slight 1 inch height advantage. Weight is even at 185 pounds for both these guys, unless somebody misses weight. And I don't think Allen will miss weight because he is a natural middleweight, whereas Paul Craig might. He was a light heavyweight before. He is now moving down to middleweight. If we talk about the reach is 75 inches for Allen and it is 76 inches for Craig. So Craig will have a slight 1 inch reach advantage as well. Stance is orthodox for both these guys. If we talk about the age, Brendan Allen is the clearly younger fighter and Craig is 35 years old now. Allen is, I believe, 27. There's a huge age gap between these two. Whenever the age gap is more than 5 years, the younger guy is expected to win almost two-thirds of the time. In their case, the age gap is almost 7 to 8 years, and this favors Brendan Allen. Now let's talk about the career statistics, starting with the striking numbers. First up, we have the strikes landed per minute. So this signifies the number of significant strikes that you land on your opponents per minute. This is 3.96 for Brendan Allen and it is just 2.57 for Paul Craig. So in this case, the advantage goes to Brendan Allen. He is landing a lot more significant strikes on his opponents per minute. Talking about the striking accuracy, it is 53% for Allen and 46%. Sorry, it is 46% for Paul Craig. So again, Allen has an advantage here as well. He is more accurate with his strikes. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute. Now, this is a defensive striking metric, and this signifies the number of significant strikes that you absorb from your opponents per minute on average. This is 3.89 for Brendan Allen and 2.85 for Paul Craig. So, in this case, the guy with the lower number has an advantage because he is getting hit lesser. So, Paul Craig has an advantage. Striking defense is 46% for Brendan Allen and it is also 46% for Paul Craig. So both these guys are even. Now let's talk about the wrestling and the grappling statistic. First up, we have the takedown average, which is 1.22 for Allen and 1.9 for Paul Craig. So Craig has an advantage here. He is getting more takedowns per 15 minutes compared to Brendan Allen. Takedown accuracy is 42% for Allen and it is just 23% for Paul Craig. So here the advantage shifts to Brendan Allen. He is more accurate with his takedowns. Takedown defense is 55% for Brendan Allen and it is 42% for Paul Craig. Keep in mind that most of these stats are basically for Paul Craig based on his fights at light heavyweight because he was a light heavyweight fighter before. He has had just one fight in middleweight and these fights are mostly against bigger guys who were light heavyweights. But looking at this, the takedown defense advantage also goes to Brendan Allen. Submission average is 1.6 for Allen and it is 1.7 for Paul Craig. So both these guys are evenly matched, but a very slight advantage goes to Paul Craig again. Overall, in the striking, the first two metrics, which were the offensive striking metrics, those favor Brendan Allen. In the defense, these guys were pretty much tight. Talking about the wrestling and the grappling, they are pretty even, but because of the size advantage, I think I'll give the edge to Paul Craig. He is the bigger guy, and in wrestling, size definitely matters. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by position for both these guys, starting with Brendan Allen. So 74% of all his strikes are from the standing position, just 8% from the clinch and 18% on the ground. If you compare this with Paul Craig, 59% of all his strikes are from the standing position, 17% in the clinch. So he is using a lot more strikes in the clinch compared to Brendan Allen, and 25% on the ground. This is also higher than Brendan Allen's 18%. So he is using ground and pound more in his game compared to Brendan Allen. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by target for both these guys. Starting with Allen, 61% of all his strikes are to the head, 25% to the body, and 15% to the leg. If we compare this with Paul Craig, 54% of all his strikes are to the head, 29% to the body, and 16% to the leg. So Paul Craig goes to the body more often than Brendan Allen, and Brendan Allen goes to the head more often than Paul Craig. Now let's take a look at some of the previous fights of these two guys, starting with Allen. So Allen in his last fight beat Bruno Silva, and he knocked him down to get the finish in the very first round via submission rear naked choke. This fight happened in June of this year. Really, for Brendan Allen, Bruno Silva is a really tough guy, and Alex Pereira could not finish Bruno Silva. However, Brendan Allen did it in the very first round. If we talk about the fight before this, Brendan Allen beat Andre Muniz, and this finish happened in the third round via rear naked choke again, and this fight happened in February of this year. So this will be the third time that Brendan Allen is fighting in 2023. It was pretty matched in terms of the strikes landed column, but Brendan Allen had a takedown and he had two submission attempts, out of which on one of them he was able to get the win. If we talk about the fight before that, Allen beat Jotko, and this fight was a really quick finish. He again beat him via rear naked choke. This fight happened in October of last year. Brendan Allen was able to get the takedown and sink in the choke. If we talk about the fight before this, Brendan Allen beat Jacob Malcolm, and in this fight he was ahead in terms of the strikes landed, and Malcolm landed 7 takedowns on Brendan Allen. Allen landed 2 on Malcolm, and he won the fight via unanimous decision. It was a 3-round fight. If we talk about the fight before this, Brendan Allen beat Sam Alvey via rear naked choke. So his favorite submission is rear naked choke, and he did it in the second round. This fight happened in February of 2022. If we talk about this fight, Brendan Allen got a knockdown over Sam Alvey, and he was able to sink in the rear naked choke to win the fight. And before this was his most recent loss in the UFC, which came against Chris Curtis. In this fight, Chris Curtis was outlanding Brendan Allen, and he eventually got the knockdown and finished the fight. He was able to land knees from the clinch and get the finish in the second round. Now let's talk about Paul Craig's previous few fights. So Paul Craig in his middleweight debut beat Andre Muniz in the second round via knockout elbows, and both of these guys landed 2 takedowns on each other. Paul Craig also had a submission attempt on Andre Muniz. Andre was doing good in the very first round, but in the second round, Paul Craig was able to get the finish. If you talk about the fight before this, was at light heavyweight, where Paul Craig lost to Johnny Walker in the very first round via knockout, and he also lost to Volkan Oezdemir via unanimous decision. Before this, Paul Craig had a win over Nikita Krylov. In this fight, he was able to get the takedown and sink in the triangle choke to win the fight. Before this, he beat Jamal Hill, which is a great win for Paul Craig, and this happened in the very first round. Before this, Paul Craig also beat Mauricio Rua, and in this fight, he beat him via knockout in the second round, and this fight happened in 2020. Paul Craig was able to land 4 takedowns on Mauricio Rua. However, if you see all these fights, Paul Craig has not been landing knockdowns on his guys, whereas if you talk about Brendan Allen knocked out Bruno Silva right here, and he also had a knockdown over Sam Alvey. So I'll give the power advantage slightly to Brendan Allen. Paul Craig really does not have a lot of power in his punches. Both these guys, if you look at their records, they don't have a lot of knockout wins. So that should tell you that they're not really powerful. Where they shine is on the ground. Both these guys have a lot of submission wins. However, in case of the submissions, the variety that you see is on Brendan Allen's record is mostly submission via rear naked choke. Whereas if you talk about Paul Craig, I think he is a more diversified striker. He will be the bigger guy. That is why if this fight goes to the ground, I think Paul Craig has an edge over Brendan Allen because he has more diversity in terms of his submissions as well as he is the bigger guy. If this fight remains standing, I think I'll give the edge to Brendan Allen. He is the better striker. He has a little more power than Paul Craig. If I have to give a winner, I think I'll go with the younger guy. I'll go with Brendan Allen. I think if he stuffs the takedowns of Paul Craig and keep it standing, he can win this fight. Also, keep in mind this is the first time that Paul Craig is scheduled for a 5 round main event, whereas Brendan Allen has been scheduled to fight a 5 round main event. So this is his second time. He is the younger fighter by about 7 or 8 years. So that definitely helps him. For all these reasons, I'm picking Brendan to win this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.